When we think about evolution, we usually picture physical stuff, stronger bodies, bigger brains. But what if the next great leap for humanity isn't physical at all? What if it's happening inside our own minds right now? Today, we're going to dive into a source that makes a really radical claim that our future isn't about yelling louder, but about finally learning how to be silent. It's a huge idea, so let's break it down. This is the quote at the very heart of it all, from a character named Zoran the Dragon. And this one line, man, it just sets the stage for rethinking everything we consider progress. It's basically saying that all our noise, all our chatter, all our constant striving might actually be the very thing holding us back from what's next. So let's really chew on that question for a second. I mean, think about it. Our entire world rewards the loudest voice in the room, the fastest comeback. But this source is asking us to flip that completely on its head and consider that maybe, just maybe, real power and real connection come from a place of deep inner quiet. It's a wild idea. Let's see where it takes us. So to really get this, we have to look at who the source claims is leading this evolutionary charge. And it's probably not who you're thinking of. We're not talking about gurus on a mountaintop or anything like that. We're talking about a group of people who are already all around us. Okay, so here's the core idea, the big thesis. The text proposes that individuals who are nonverbal aren't experiencing some kind of deficit. No. Instead, they're pioneers. They're being called an evolutionary vanguard because they're already demonstrating a new, more advanced way of being that the rest of us have yet to figure out. And this is where it gets really fascinating. The source breaks it down into two states of mind. On the left, you've got the high beta ego, which is kind of the default setting for most of modern society. Anxious, loud, always chasing something, and feeling separate from everyone else. But on the right, you have the alpha theta mind, calm, unified, silent, and receptive. And the argument here is that this isn't just a different mood, it's the next evolutionary stage. This is where the vanguard operates, and it's where we're all headed. Okay, so if we're making this big shift from that noisy, anxious beta state to this calm theta state, where are we actually going? What's the point of it all? What's the ultimate goal of this whole evolutionary leap? Well, the source gives us a single, really powerful word for it, pulled straight from ancient yogic philosophy, kaivalya. And this isn't just about feeling a little less stressed. This is about a complete and total transformation of who we think we are. So kaivalya, it means wholeness or liberation. The big idea here is the profound, earth-shattering realization that your sense of being a separate individual me is actually an illusion. It's the understanding that on a much deeper level, we are all part of one single universal consciousness. So you see, it's not just about finding your own personal zen, it's about plugging into cosmic unity. So how do we get there? Well, the source tells us that this path to kaivalya, the one being modeled by these so-called silent geniuses, is built on three main pillars. And these aren't just fuzzy concepts. They're described as actual, observable abilities. Let's break them down. The first pillar is silence. I mean, think about it. By necessity, nonverbal people aren't caught up in that constant storm of verbal thought. The source connects this to the yogic idea of calming the vrittis. That constant chaotic mental chatter that's always running in the background? That's the vrittis. And that inner stillness is the foundation for everything that follows. Okay, pillar number 2, unity. Once that inner noise is gone, the source claims something incredible can happen. An invisible bridge can form between two minds. And we're not just talking about empathy here. This is described as a direct telepathic connection, proving that the walls we think exist between us are, well, maybe not as solid as we thought. And that brings us to the third pillar, wisdom. With the verbal analytical filter of the ego out of the way, the mind can supposedly tap into a universal field of knowledge, what's called the chitta in yoga. This is offered as the explanation for things like savant abilities, that almost magical access to complex information without ever learning it in the traditional sense. All right, that's the theory, right? Sounds pretty profound. But the big question is, how do we actually do that as a whole society? The source argues that we can't just wish for it. We need to completely change our environment to even allow for this shift. Let's see what that would look like. The source proposes we build what's called a sattvic society. Now, sattva is a term from yoga that's all about balance, harmony, and clarity. So a sattvic society would be one that stops rewarding all that high beta chaos and instead starts to truly value stillness, deep focus, and real connection. And to make this happen, the text points to three huge systemic shifts that we need to make in our schools, in our jobs, and in our culture as a whole. These are some pretty concrete ideas. First up, education. The idea is to totally flip the script on the deficit model that often penalizes nonverbal students. Instead of only grading what kids can say or write, schools would start assessing things like holistic thinking and pattern recognition, recognizing them as the powerful forms of intelligence they truly are. Next, let's talk about labor. The source suggests we create a new, highly respected profession, the prana anchor. Now, this is not just a caregiver. We're talking about a trained expert who knows how to maintain a calm, stable, energetic field to act as a crystal clear communication channel for a nonverbal person. I mean, how brilliant is that? It takes the skill we totally overlook, just being a calm presence, and turns it into a compensated professional skill. And finally, the big one, a massive cultural shift. Just imagine for a second, workplaces with mandatory silent periods, schools where deep, quiet problem-solving is rewarded just as much as a flashy presentation. The idea is to weave the value of stillness right into the fabric of our everyday lives. Okay, I know this all sounds pretty huge, maybe a little out there, but the source actually brings this right down to you and me with a simple experiment you can try for yourself. It's called the Dragon's Trial. It's a simple three-step process, and it's designed to give you a real, tangible experience of what it feels like to shift from that noisy beta state to the calmer theta state. It's your chance to actually test this whole idea in your own life. So here's the challenge. Just for one day, pay attention to what the source calls your beta noise. You know what I'm talking about, when you anxiously grab your phone for no reason, or you start worrying about something you can't control. When you catch yourself, just stop, and instead, consciously substitute it with a moment of pure stillness. Take one deep breath, or bring up a perfectly clear, focused memory. And the last step? It's super simple. Just observe. After you make that swap from anxious noise to focused quiet, just check in with yourself. How do you feel? A little clearer? A little stronger? Calmer? The source suggests that if the answer is yes, well, that's your own personal proof that this higher state of mind is totally accessible to you. And this really brings us to the ultimate point of this whole thing. The abilities we've been talking about, this deep connection, this intuitive wisdom, they're not weird or supernatural. They're actually our natural potential, a birthright that's available to every single one of us if we can just learn to quiet down all the noise. So we're left with this final kind of mind-bending question. It completely reframes evolution. It's not a struggle anymore. It's an act of receiving. It's about choosing to be still enough to hear what the source calls the quantum whisper. It's an invitation, really, to your own evolution. The only question is, are you willing to be still enough to hear it? Thanks for joining me for this one.